If you could build a personal brand to 100,000 followers, what would that do for your business? In this video, we're going to be exploring Lofoten, Norway. And along the way, I'm going to give you the no fluff, no BS playbook that's helped me grow my audience to over 16 million across my personal brand and my business. This is going to be the biggest deep dive on building a profitable personal brand that honestly I've ever put out there. I feel compelled to do this because, one of my core tenets or values in life is being insanely generous. There are 4 core things that we're going to cover in this masterclass. Number 1, my founder flywheel and how you can set up one in your business. From there, we're going to go and dive into the content GPS, which is the most powerful system I've ever invented over the last 15 years building for profitable businesses. The third thing is we're going to dive into monetization moments because we're actually trying to drive dollars to your business. And then from there, I'm going to show you my automation blueprint because the truth is we want to remove ourselves from the stuff that isn't in our zone of genius and be able to double down on working on our business, not in it, and building this appreciating asset, your personal brand, that can scale without you over time. Along the way too, I also want you to know that we've gone and made a personal brand workbook below, and I'd encourage you to go and download that. You can thank me later. So let's just first start with the trust revolution. It's roughly 71% of Americans don't trust their neighbor. And in this new world where people trust people less, we need to find a way to connect with people, to build that resonance. The best way to do that is to share your story, your values, who you are, your playbooks, your systems. And that's what we're going to get into here. I started building my personal brand about 4 years ago. Up until then, I had been really focused on building my company brands. I had always been behind the brand, right? Helping grow the content, grow the team. But as I started getting older, I hit 30 and I was like, what? As I go and look over the next 20 years of my life, I'm going to be really focused on starting a number of different companies. And I shifted my mindset from just being the entrepreneur behind the scenes to this more of a mindset of being almost like a portfolio manager where I have a number of businesses under me. And so it became really obvious to me that I should be building my own brand because while I may sell or exit some of these businesses underneath it, my brand is an appreciating asset that I'll have for the rest of my life. I started building on X and started sharing my thoughts there. Within a few months, grew my following to over 40,000 people. I then began sharing that same writing onto LinkedIn and grew my following to now what's an audience of over 840,000 people. And then some of my best ideas, I started sharing in short form videos on Instagram Reels, YouTube, TikTok. It started making a big impact to the point now where I've grown my personal brand to about 3.2 million people across all the different platforms. My content now reaches over 81 million people organically every single month without spending a dime on ads. It's increased my cash flow, increased opportunities, increased the ability for me to become a magnet for top talent. And this has all come not from a focus on followers, but from a focus on the process, falling in love with the daily habit of sharing my work, sharing my thinking, and inspiring people. This is a media moat that I've built that I control. And this is why I think the future belongs to media first founders. All right, let's get into the first component here, the founder flywheel. So think of your business like this engine. The more you grow your personal brand, the more you grow your business brand, the more cash flow you make, and the more you're able to reinvest those profits back into content to really get this flywheel going. There's really 3 key elements that you want to think about across this flywheel. First off, you have your rented audience, right? This exists on social platforms like YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, X, TikTok. Your rented audience is called rented because you don't own this audience. Those audiences you've built are actually owned by the platform. And so while it's really great to go and build that rented audience, you need to understand that on a given post you put out there, you're probably only reaching about 10% of the people in your audience because that's how the algorithm works. So your owned audience really exists whether it's in your newsletter, an email list, or getting people's phone numbers. I see a lot of founders, they don't set this up, thereby they end up just building some audience on social, but they're not actually able to go and market directly to people. When you own your email list, you send out an email, it goes to every single one of those people. And say you have an open rate of 70%, 70% of those people are actually getting that email and opening it, which is far greater than the algorithm is going to push your content on any given platform. So the key thing is to own it. Your email list is probably the most valuable asset you can build in your business. And whether it's using platforms like ConvertKit, HubSpot, Substack, Beehive, it honestly doesn't matter. what matters most is not the tools, it's you, your consistency, and honestly, just being insanely generous with your audience and just helping folks out. Now, the third step is your monetized audience. We're not trying to just grow followers here. We're trying to actually make dollars. Biggest way to do that is through CTAs in your newsletter and sometimes on social, although you don't want to overdo it because we don't want to be salesy. And we're going to drive people from primarily our newsletter to things like sales calls or direct sales of our actual product. Your monetized audience is really then how you get that flywheel ripping, because now you're actually growing the cash flows to your business. And a percentage of that, you're able to now go and invest back in growing your audience, because the fuel of your audience, what do you think it is? It's content. The higher quality your content, the faster your audience grows, the more leads you get, the more you're able to reinvest back into your founder flywheel. And this is the modern way of growing an insane engine around your business. Growing your personal brand is very similar to any other investment out there. It generally looks kind of like this. At first, it may feel a bit slow, which is why it's super important that your mindset initially is around, I'm going to be doing this for the long term. This is for people that are looking to build a real asset, not just even for the next 6 months or year, but for the next decade, 5 decades. One of the biggest advantages you can have as a founder these days is to think long term. While everyone else is addicted to dopamine, stuck in, what's going to be the trend over the next week or the next month, there are some things that are timeless, right? And building a profitable personal brand and your flywheel around it is timeless. All right, so at this juncture, you're probably asking, which platforms do I start on? And how I see it is, do you want to be pen first or camera first? Pen first would involve being on more of the written platforms like X and LinkedIn, and camera first would involve being on platforms like Instagram, YouTube, maybe even TikTok. On the other side too, you want to think about, well, if you're looking to build a profitable personal brand, you've also got to be thinking about, where is your dream customer? As I've gone and grown on all 5 platforms, the platform that I actually think is most attractive these days, which probably drives 4x more leads than the next platform for me, is, well, right here on YouTube. YouTube represents the largest search engine for videos in the world. Also, when you think about the relationship and the resonance you're building with people, I think there's just such a beautiful thing to showing up on camera and in audio in longer form content, and not just showing up for, say, 30 seconds or 60 seconds with someone in a tweet, on a reel, on a story, providing value and allowing them to also just get a sense of who you are, your energy, what you're interested in. This leads me to the next aspect, which is building your personal moat. I've found it difficult over the years. Oftentimes, I've been told by people, hey, Matt, I'd love to see you be more authentic. Matt, you should lean into your authenticity. But that's such a loaded word, right? Authenticity. Like, what the hell does authenticity even mean? What I've learned is that it's about developing this personal moat around the things that you feel comfortable sharing online that really speak to who you are at your core. And I ended up coming across this book called Ikigai, right? Ikigai is a term that stands for your reason for being. It's your calling in life. And it sits at the intersection of 4 sort of concentric circles. One being, what you're great at, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, and what you love to do. And when I started to look at the patterns across these 4 different quadrants, I started to see that in the center were things like building distribution from day one, coaching founders, viewing entrepreneurship as this beautiful, soulful journey, traveling the world, helping founders achieve more freedom in life, and building amazing communities, building movements, and hosting epic founder retreats. The cool thing is that the center of my Ikigai is exactly the kind of content that I started sharing, which then created my personal moat. It's less of a niche. The fact is that you can become the niche. You don't need to pigeonhole yourself as the SaaS guy, or you don't need to pigeonhole yourself as the agency guy. Just be you. Talk about the things that interest you. I believe that entrepreneurship is this soulful journey. And that's why I believe, the journey of building a personal brand and of building a business is like the most epic meditation you could ever go on in your life. And just like you're going to become the niche, right? And you're going to find your personal moat, you're also on the more spiritual side going to get to know yourself on a deeper level, exploring your calling, exploring your interests, exploring the things that make you you. learning to be confident in who you are, learning to have that presence, that resonance, and just to speak your mind, to have a unique point of view. Keep in mind, a lot of this will come from the doing, not just the thinking. I want you to make sure that you're spending at least 80% of your time actually executing. The other 20% can be left for things like, thinking, delegating, designing, but 80% off the get-go has to be about taking massive action. I want you to go and download the personal brand workbook below in the description. Click on that link, and inside of there, you're going to go and find this whole Ikigai exercise. I want you to go and complete that, putting at least 3 to 5 bullet points for each quadrant, and then discover the commonalities are in the center of this. And then that is the kind of content I want you to go and start sharing online. So now that you've figured out, really who you are and the kind of content you're going to want to share, now I think you need to figure out who you want to target. And so let's talk about going and clarifying your ideal customer. One of the most useful tools that I've used to go and help come up with a content strategy that's genuinely going to resonate with my dream customer is honestly just to ask them. What I'll do is I'll go and create generally a type form survey. And in that survey, I'll ask people, what is your biggest challenge right now? What is your biggest goal that you're trying to accomplish by end of year? And what's keeping you up at night? And then I'll go and I'll take all of those survey responses. I'll generally download it as a file from Typeform, upload that to ChatGPT as an example. And then I'll go and prompt ChatGPT to go and say, go and come up with 100 content topics for me that would really resonate with my dream customer based on the survey feedback I've gotten attached here. So then ChatGPT will go and come up with 100 high converting content ideas for me that really just answer the questions and the problems that are on my dream customer's mind. So this eliminates the guesswork, right? You don't need to wonder how you're going to go and attract more people. Just simply go and solve the problems that your dream customer is facing. Go and use the Typeform survey questions that I've put inside of the personal brand workbook, which is below in the description, and go and put these into your own Typeform, send that out to 10 to 20 of your dream customers, synthesize the results, upload it to ChatGPT, and then bam, there you go. You've got your high converting content topics. All right, so you now have 2 really important pieces. You have your personal moat charted out, and you have your ideal customer drawn up, and you know what content's going to resonate with them. But that is all for nothing if you don't have this next piece sorted out, which is your content GPS system. Without this system, I would not be able to travel the world. I wouldn't have the freedom that I have. The content GPS is all around creating amazing content that has a good foundation, that then has the right content multiplication, and then has your right distribution in place. So it really comes down to those 3 pieces: your content foundation, your content multiplication, and your content distribution. So let's start off with your content foundation. When you're going and you're creating content online, what you really want to be thinking about are, what are your 4 content categories? Your content categories make up essentially the drumbeat of your marketing strategy online. These are likely the 4 key things that you continually come back to that create an overall theme to your content. I also want to remind you, none of this is meant to be super rigid, right? Have fun with it. If you want to talk about your travels, talk about it. You want to talk about a struggle you had today that's a bit different than what you generally share? Go for it. Don't let your content strategy become so rigid that it doesn't become fun. When I think about my content categories, I think about things like personal branding, personal stories, audience growth systems, and really showing entrepreneurs how to design their dream life and remove themselves from operations. The next step there on your foundation is then coming up with actual ideas around your content categories. And for some people, this is a real struggle. They can't figure out what the heck they're going to talk about online. I want to get into the Founder OS content idea machine. This is how you can go and create 100 content ideas in just 30 minutes. So first off, you pick your categories, and we just went over that. Secondly, there's really 2 approaches when you're creating content. There's an expert approach and a curation approach. So the expert approach is when you're already an expert in the given subject matter you're about to go and show people. So maybe you're an expert software engineer and you're going to go and teach people how to code JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and keep up on the newest AI trends. On the other side of things, you may be watching this and going, I'm not really an expert in anything. In that case, you may take the more curator approach. Okay, and the curator approach is really fun. It's where you're going about learning some new skill or taking up some new expertise, and you're going to share your journey along the way. You're going to share the tips, the tricks, the books you've read, the mentors that have taught you different lessons, and you're going to bring people along that journey. Let's get into now how to go and come up with 100 content ideas in 30 minutes. In each of these bits, there are different kinds of content that you can come up with. I provided you with all of the different types of content inside of that personal brand workbook linked in the description. But the cool thing is that you can go and using this ChatGPT prompt right here, go and enter in your content categories, go enter in what your core mission is of your brand, as well as your unique value proposition. And from there, this prompt will go and help you come up with 100 content ideas, not even in 30 minutes, but just in 30 seconds or less. We've got a plethora of different content ideas now. And now you're going to actually go and start creating the content. So first off, you really want to think about batching your content. This is a bit of like a YouTube filming week for me. So I'll probably go and end up filming around 4 YouTube videos over the next 5 days, and that'll give me content for the next month and a half. Batching is a really core thing that you want to be doing as a founder, because we want to be the CEO of this media empire we're building, not just the constant creator. Because a founder-led brand is one part entrepreneur, one part creator, and the number one reason that both of these people give up is because they burn out. We really want to think about building in systems, building in ways of being that reduce our odds of burnout. Now, another core aspect on the content foundation side of things is your content IP, which stands for your content intellectual property. You probably know it, right? There are books out there that those concepts, those words have almost been a part now of like just common language. Examples of this include things like extreme ownership from Jocko Willink, or deep work from Cal Newport, or getting your 10,000 hours to become an expert from Malcolm Gladwell. These are examples of these authors creating content intellectual property, which are words that they've invented or phrases that they've invented that inevitably, when people hear these in popular culture, they trigger and link that back to the author. Really go and think about the common words or phrases that you use when describing different concepts within your content categories and in your niche. And so for me, that's things like your personal moat. It's things like your content waterfall system. I talk about the 4 W's. And when people hear that, they link it back to me. The beautiful thing is when you do this enough, you'll find that people start actually coming to you and using your phrases in just their normal language. And so it just creates this brandable language that is associated with you, which I think is incredibly powerful. Let's get into the next aspect here, right? Which is content multiplication. When it comes to multiplying your content, there is no better system than the content waterfall system. With this system, you're able to go and repurpose one pillar piece of content into 36 other pieces of content. This is a beast of a system. Let me give you an example here, because I'm much better probably at showing you than just telling you. Let's just say we take this long form YouTube video here, which is how to build a profitable personal brand in just 30 days. This video on my YouTube got over 250,000 views in just a few months. What we then do with this piece of content is we can go and turn it into 3 Instagram reels, right? And taking out the best 60 seconds of content from this long form piece and using that for short form Instagram content. Those 3 Instagram reels can now also become 3 YouTube shorts, as well as 3 TikTok videos. Now, the cool thing is that in any given 12-minute YouTube video, that's approximately 2,500 words of copy. Those 2,500 words have little nuggets in it that can be used to write another 10 tweets for X. It can also be used for one newsletter that I can go and publish in 6 weeks. And in addition to that, I can probably go and create 3 long-form LinkedIn posts off of this as well. This is an example of my content being multiplied. When you're going and you're building up your content strategy across all the different platforms, at first, you're probably just focusing on one platform, right? It's much better to do one platform really, really well than to spread yourself thin across all 5 platforms. That said, as you scale, you're probably going to want to create more of an omnipresent content strategy. So when someone's on YouTube, then switches to Instagram, goes to X, then LinkedIn, there you are. When you go and you start eventually thinking about being on more platforms, you don't want to end up on a content hamster wheel. Quality suffers, energy suffers, which leads to burnout. And this is where I see so many founders just give up. The content waterfall system allows you to multiply your effort, allow you to delegate more of your content to folks on your team. So you can focus on making, say, one great piece of content every week as an example, and know that that great piece of content will be multiplied using the content waterfall system into 30 plus other pieces of content. I give you more details on this inside of the personal brand workbook. So you can go and check that out to help go and scale your efforts and build more leverage in your business and with your time. All right, let's get into the last piece here in terms of the content GPS side of things, which is your content distribution. Each platform has its own nuances, and I'm going to get into what's worked best for me across each of these platforms. So when it comes to YouTube, right, the main way of growing on YouTube is just creating high quality, long form content. It's a platform that values quality much higher than any other platform. And what that means is it's actually better to create one high quality video every month versus creating like 16 mediocre pieces of content on a monthly basis. 80% of the battle is your packaging, which is your title, your thumbnail, your idea. And if you don't have time to go and really think about great packaging by researching on platforms like oneof10.com, looking at different outliers, going and taking time to develop a great thumbnail, a great title, and even testing those using A/B testing that's embedded into YouTube, you may be missing out on a lot of the battle. On X, my approach has always been to create 2 pieces of content a day, every day at 8 a.m. EST and 2 p.m. EST. This is a platform, and really the only one that I found, that allows you to use an external tool and it doesn't seem to affect your reach. So the tool that I use on X is called Hype Fury. Inside of Hype Fury, I go and I'm able to create and batch all of my tweets, and then it will automatically go and ensure that those are released again at 8 a.m. and at 2 p.m. And I don't need to do any more work. So it's a beautiful thing. What I also do is produce 4 longer form pieces of content for X about 4 days a week on Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday, because that's what I've seen work best, is on every single piece of content across X. I have core CTAs that lead people to my newsletter, but we'll get into that a little bit later here in this masterclass. When it comes to LinkedIn, I've talked about that I distribute every single day. As I've built up my personal media empire, it's actually my social media manager that's posting to LinkedIn every day. What we found is when people use scheduling tools, it actually can screw up your reach on LinkedIn. And so we avoid those. So we always include a high quality image with the post because we find that it helps it get more reach. And then at the bottom of the LinkedIn post, we have a CTA that leads people to join my newsletter. When it comes to Instagram, I use Nick, my chief distribution officer, to distribute all of that content. So the process there is I'll go and create all the copy, or my team will go and edit down the reels from longer form content. And then from there, Yan, the creative director, will go and actually stylize the grid so that it looks super aesthetic. We use Figma.com to go and design a beautiful grid. We are very intentional about what we're putting out there. And so we use Figma to go and create the look of the grid, including the different thumbnails for the different reels I put out, as well as all of the Instagram carousels that we make. That content is distributed around 8 a.m. every morning and 1 p.m. every afternoon. So a carousel and a reel every single day. On TikTok, it's truthfully just a lot of my Instagram reel content that I'm just also posting up to TikTok. And then from there, my newsletter is something I publish twice per week. If you're going more writing first, you're likely going to do X and LinkedIn and drive people to a newsletter. If you're going more video first, you're probably going to do Instagram, TikTok, as well as YouTube, and drive people to a newsletter. With all of this optimization, right, I want to just also point out that when I'm looking to grow on a given platform, I actually don't focus too much on metrics. When you get too caught up in the views and the metrics, I think it just leads to misery, because the reality is that the algorithm's always going up and it's going down. And you can't control all of that all the time. What you can control is your effort and your approach to the daily work. And what I've found most helpful is to actually just focus on the artistry, the mastery, the craftsmanship of making content that's insanely generous, that helps make an impact in people's lives. And the coolest part of this is that what I've learned is that when you focus on the craft, the score takes care of itself. So on the more quantitative metric side of things, I like to keep it simple. When you have too many metrics, it just leads to confusion. Every single person in my company has one core metric that determines success. And similarly, off the platforms, when I'm thinking about YouTube or X, LinkedIn, whatever, I like to think of one or two metrics max that really determines the success in that given platform. For YouTube, it may be things like, subscriber growth and then the amount of views per video. For X, it may be the amount of views we're getting per week and the amount of followers we're driving per week. On LinkedIn, same thing, views and followers. On Instagram, same deal really. It's kind of views and followers. In addition to that, the most important thing that I do across all of my businesses and my personal brand is take time, every month personally to go and look at what were our top 10 performers on a given platform and what were the bottom 10 performers and what are the patterns in that content and what's the stuff we should double down on and the stuff that we should stop doing. So what this allows me to do is really delegate all of those metrics, all of the performance analysis, and allow my team to go and execute that so that I can focus most on creating art, creating beauty, creating stuff I'm proud of that's informed by the data, but doesn't necessarily need to be all around the data. Keep your metrics simple, pick one or two metrics per platform, do a bit of a content audit every month, looking at your best content and then your worst content, doubling down on the patterns at work and removing the stuff that is not working. And honestly, when you put in those reps over the long term, imagine doing that for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Imagine how smart you'll be. Go and determine your metric per platform. Keep it simple, have fun, and get after it. All right, so you master the content GPS system and you're not gonna have to worry about what you're gonna post ever again. But if you don't have this next piece, I'd say there's probably no chance you're building a profitable personal brand, because what we need to get into now is how to actually turn all that cold, hard attention you've been driving online into predictable revenue. And we're going to do that through proven monetization systems. We're not just building a personal brand for followers or vanity metrics. We're building this to actually build a real business around us. What I want to first describe to you is my own monetization philosophy. Most creators view it like content drives followers, and then they just kind of hope that money appears. But successful founder-led brands really see it like putting out content, owning your audience, getting systematic conversion, and then predictable revenue from all that attention you're driving. And the difference really is having the right bridges set up to convert your audience from awareness all the way through to purchase. There are really three main revenue bridges that we're going to cover here. Number one are your strategic CTAs. This is where you're going to convert people into your product ecosystem. Number two is your newsletter engine. So this is where you actually are able to go and build rich one-to-one relationships with your audience. And lastly is your conversion systems. This is where you're going to turn trust into transactions. And so let's get into bridge number one, strategic CTAs. When you're going and creating content online, you're creating this ocean of attention. And with all of that attention, you want to make sure that you have CTAs, which are kind of like a net that's going to catch the fish from that ocean of attention. Now, CTA stands for call to actions. I place CTAs in 20 different locations across all of my social platforms. On LinkedIn, as an example, you can put call to actions in your bio link. You can put it in your about section. You can have your featured section on LinkedIn, plug your newsletter, your core product, and things like workshops or webinars you may launch. You can also go and put it at the end of a post. And also, if you have any images that you're sharing on LinkedIn, you can also embed CTAs into those images. On YouTube, as an example, you can put your CTAs within your videos. You can have them as well in the description of any video that you put out. You can put them in your about section and as well in your banner on YouTube. Now on Instagram, CTAs appear in things like your stories, in your Instagram bio. You can be putting it at the end of your captions and also embedding different CTAs into the actual reels themselves. On X, I like to put all of my CTAs in the bio. You can also plug it if you'd like in your X cover photo. Within each tweet, as well as in any threads, you can also go and drive people at the end of them to go and join your newsletter. And on TikTok, I also put it just in the bio. So those are of the 20 strategic CTA spots that you can go and plug into your content. And I've gone and listed all of these inside of the personal brand workbook in the description below. So let's start to talk a bit about the CTA optimization framework, okay? This is where you actually make the CTAs rich, contextual, and make sure that people are as enticed as possible to convert to the call to action that you put in your content. So number one is you want the CTA to match the content context. If you're sharing audience growth tips, well then your CTA should be related to some sort of audience growth resources. You then want to make sure you're using benefit-driven language, okay? So instead of just subscribe to my newsletter, you may say, get my free weekly systems that help founders scale to $5 million. Creating some urgency, scarcity can also be really good. Like join 120,000 founders, getting my Saturday systems email is much better than just, hey, subscribe for tips. These are a few tips to help you go and really make sure that you're increasing your conversion rate from your social audience to your newsletter, and then within your newsletter to your product. All right, let's get into bridge number 2, your newsletter engine. Newsletters, honestly, I think are the most underrated form of media ownership that exists out there. And newsletter audiences convert about 120% better than social media followers for one core reason: permission. They've given you permission to really build that richer relationship with them. Eventually, that relationship can convert into revenue. Let's talk about the first part of your newsletter engine, which is building it strategically. First off, you want to create a focused sign-up page. For an example of this, you can go to founderos.com/newsletter, and you can see that this is a landing page. People can't scroll anywhere in the header bar. And so what I have here is a bold value proposition. I've got credibility showing other entrepreneurs speaking highly of what I've built. You see a clear promise saying that they're just getting one email every week that gives them a proven system to grow their profitable personal brand. One core aspect that I always do, doesn't matter what newsletter I create, I always have some form of lead magnet. Your lead magnet can be anything, right? A checklist, a chapter of a book. It could be a resource, a diagram. It could be, a system, a playbook that you've made, a blueprint. Just that's what you want to put on the other side of someone going and giving you their email. Right? And so the key, again, is to give something to people and ask yourself, what would be so insanely generous that people can't help but sign up for my newsletter? Inside of your newsletter, one of my favorite ways of converting people that I've made millions of dollars doing over the last few years is via your newsletter welcome series. So what you're going to do is have a 5-email educational email series when people sign up to your newsletter. And then you're going to have what I call a 4-email FOMO series, meaning fear of missing out. So that 5-email educational series is probably going to have 1 email around immediate value, right? Delivering the lead magnet that you had promised people. The second thing is you're probably then going to get into your origin story in the second email, how you got to doing what you do, some social proof around it, why you're doing it, kind of like your hero's journey. From there, you're going to get into a 3rd email around social proof, probably highlighting someone that you've helped. The 4th part is then you're going to start setting expectations for what people can expect as being a part of your community, the movement, and this, newsletter community that you're building. And then 5th is you're probably going to give a soft introduction to your actual paid offering. So you're not going to sell people hardcore in this, right? We don't want to come across salesy, but you just want to introduce, like, this is what I do, this is how I do it, and these are the kind of people that I serve. From there, what you're then going to have is a FOMO series, which could be anywhere from 4 emails to 6 emails. And these are going to go and sell people more directly. In these, you may talk about different success stories that people have had with your product. You may talk about some of the biggest benefits of your product or some big problems you've solved, and then give people a clear articulation of exactly what you do, how you do it. And then probably if you're more of like a community or it's a course, maybe it's an agency, you're probably going to drive people to an actual sales call. If you're a SaaS product or an e-commerce product, at that point, you're probably driving people just to go and purchase the product on a given product landing page. The cool thing is that every single person that you have signing up to your newsletter is then receiving this 9 email series over the first 9 days of joining your newsletter. And so you can imagine as you shovel in more newsletter subscribers, you just have more people automatically going through this welcome series. Once that series is done, they're then joining your weekly newsletter series. The key metrics to consider tracking with your newsletter are things like number 1, your open rates. You want to be aiming for 60% plus. Your click-through rates, you want to aim for over 8%. Your reply rates, aim for over 2%. Conversion rates to paid offers, generally trying to get to 20% plus there. And then your subscriber lifetime value. Just like, your packaging is your most important element for, YouTube, and your hook is your most valuable element of a thread. When it comes to your newsletter, it's your subject line. A few examples of really high converting subject lines are things like, curiosity driven, like this mistake that cost me $100,000. Could be something that's more benefit focused, like how to 10x your content reach. There's things that are more personal, like, my biggest failure and what it taught me, or things like number driven ones, right? 7 systems that built my $13 million business. When you're going and building your list, right, you want to be super intentional, build something you're proud of, and understand that you are building probably the most valuable asset in your business, because inevitably your newsletter list is your customer list. More newsletter subscribers, probably the more profit you're driving to your personal media company. All right, so we've gone through the newsletter engine side of things. Now let's get into your conversion systems. So let's move on then to the second aspect of actually going and driving sales, right? Which is your discovery call framework. I want to give you a bit of detail here on my 60-minute call structure. So minutes 1 to 20, you're going to do a lot of deep qualification of people, right? You're going to understand what's their biggest challenge right now. What are they really trying to do in their life, in their business? What's working? What's not working? What does success look like for them? And what's the cost for them not solving that problem? You're really gaining a lot of intel. You're understanding their pain, what they're really trying to do and what they're trying to avoid. Then you're going to be able to then position what you're building in the most strategic way possible. Minutes 21 to 40, you're now going over your 4-pillar presentation, right? Which you're going to then present probably your proven system for actually addressing their problems and helping them get towards what they're really trying to do. When it comes then to minutes 41 to 60, this is really where it's all about your close and your objection handling. People are going to have questions, right? It's inevitable. And your job is to help them gradually navigate that based on what you learned in the discovery call aspect. And so you ask those questions to understand where they're at, so that later on, when you're going and covering objections, you can make sure that they're tailored to that person's specific situation. When you're going and starting your offer, you should probably be making the first 50 sales of your product. And you're probably going, damn it, can I just hire a salesperson? No. You need to understand what someone's objections are, how they handle it, what they ask questions around, right? So that you can go and keep on tailoring your offer for your audience. The chances that you go and just start pitching the thing at first and it's perfect and ready to go are very slim. And so by you actually being on those calls and hearing the feedback firsthand from your audience, you're able to go and sculpt your offer to make sure that it overcomes the common objections you're hearing, that it's at the right price point, and that it's helping people as simply as possible get to where they're trying to go and convert. And then what happens is you finally hit product market fit. You have something that people genuinely want, and you've sold it enough yourself that you're now in a position to actually go and build out your sales team. When you think about kind of KPIs or key performance indicators of this part of your process, first off, you want to make sure you have a show up rate on calls of at least 80%. Okay, this shows proper qualification. The second piece then is your close rate. We want that to be above 35%. Okay, that's going to indicate strong product market fit. Lastly, we want your customer satisfaction, right, to be above 90%. So putting this all together now, right, you've gone and created all of these bridges for your product, and we are well on our way to building your profitable personal brand. So in the next section, I'm going to go and show you how to automate and scale these systems so that they can run without you. Let's go. Whew. Not a bad view, I guess, eh? Not bad. Hot damn. I don't know if you can tell yet, but we just summited the 3rd mountain in 3 days here in Lofoten, Norway. This was some random challenge that we came up with. And I'd be lying to you if I didn't say, along the way, And I was thinking, why do we even do this? Should we just give up? I felt that many, many times, right? Whether it's building businesses or even building my personal brand. I want to address the elephant in the room. I want to address the psychological barriers that come up as you're building your brand. Starting off with procrastination. We put off some of the most important things in our life. And with your personal brand, you may be putting it off because you're nervous or you're worried about what other people are going to say. What I want to tell you are these 3 words. Do it messy. I oftentimes find when I'm procrastinating, it's because, I don't feel like I'm quite ready yet, or I'm, worried that I could do a better job if I just waited a little longer and waited a little longer. And I tell myself that, someday I'll get it done. Someday is one of the biggest diseases. Oftentimes, and we all know it, someday never comes. What I want to, again, encourage you to do is to do it messy. Just show up. Just hit publish, just do the thing, give it a shot. Even if it's a bit janky, it's a little all over the place, it's not that tight, that's okay. A lot of the clarity from building your personal brand is going to come from just putting things out there, taking action, and then the action breeds clarity, which breeds results, which breeds momentum, which gets you more addicted to the process. And when you're addicted to the process and you do it long enough, great things happen. So the next psychological barrier that oftentimes come up is perfectionism. I want to go over one key concept with you, which is done is better than perfect. This might strike you as a bit odd because a lot of the time I'm talking about quality and aesthetics and beauty and taste. And hey, all of these things are important. What's most important is that you actually ship the thing, the beauty, the taste, the evolution of your brand, the journey. That's what people are really after. You go look a couple years ago at my old YouTube videos. These things were definitely far from perfect, and they weren't anything to be overly proud of either, but I'm actually super proud of myself looking back. And the reason why is because I just got started. I didn't have it all figured out, but I didn't let that stop me from putting things out there. Along the journey of building my brand, I started making different tweaks, learning things that would work. I started fixing the sound, got better equipment. I started to put more thought into the thumbnails, the titles, the length of the videos, the animations, the motion graphics. I started building out an awesome team, but it all came from putting in the reps. Most of the learnings that I got along the journey of building my personal brand, there was no way these things would be obvious to me day one. I had to get started for these things to become apparent to me. It was from the doing that the clarity came about. And so if you're struggling with perfectionism, I want you to remember my voice in your head, which is done is better than perfect. Now, it's all good to focus on creation, but I see so many people that are just worried about what other people think. This is probably one of the most nasty psychological barriers. People are worried about what their family's going to think or what old people from high school are going to think about what they're building. I get it because I struggled with this, right? I was worried what my team would think. I was worried what old business partners would think. And it paralyzed me for a while. And I probably didn't get started with my personal brand for about 2 years because of this fear. So trust me, I understand it. Oftentimes as humans, we fear that which is not to come. We exacerbate these fears, right? We give way too much credence to them. You need to build with blindfolds. Don't worry about what other people are saying about you or thinking. I've built an audience now of over 3 million around my personal brand. We push 81 million views a month, all organic, without spending a dime on ads. Any given day, any given week, I can't even remember who's been talking shit. And I say this just to really, give you a sense that it really doesn't matter. And again, you're probably kind of exacerbating these fears, right? They're not that real. And it's not something you should be spending more than a second worrying about. What I oftentimes see people get caught up in as well is they feel like they're not doing enough. They start to feel like they're constantly behind. Content is like a forever game. It's an infinite game, right? There's always more you can do, more YouTube videos, more time you could spend on packaging, deeper you could go in the art of it all, in the data, the analytics. It's an endless game. And with that, it does have the potential to lead to burnout if you're not careful. What I want to say to those that get really caught up there or get a little overwhelmed by just the sheer amount of stuff you could be doing is to remember, no recovery, no results. My belief is that entrepreneurs are like athletes. We need, time to train. We need a coach to help us go and achieve new levels. We need to surround ourselves with the right community of fellow founders to scale. But we also need time for recovery. Without recovery, we can't see on the horizon. We can't really look out and see other potential opportunities because I'm in this for the long term and I want to keep it sustainable and fun and energizing. I make sure that I'm working at a pace that just feels right, because if I can stick to that pace, then I stick to the compounding. And if the compounding keeps happening, I know over the long term, I'm probably going to accomplish things that I could never even have imagined today. The last psychological barrier I want to go over, because I hear this from founders all the time, is people pleasing. As we start to make space for building our profitable personal brand, we start to notice different people clawing at us or pulling us away from it. And this leads me to the antidote to this psychological barrier, which is the no advantage. Saying no is a superpower. Too many of us just become yes people early on in our careers. And while that's super helpful, oftentimes for the first decade of your career, later on, as you start kind of scaling out your brand, scaling out your audience, building more leverage, building a team, building your personal media company, you need to be a lot more selective about the opportunities you say yes to and the things you say no to. Look at some of the richest people on the planet, like Warren Buffett, right? Warren Buffett is known for saying no to 99.9% of things that come, his way. That way, when a real opportunity comes by, and that's undeniably, it's unignorable, it's something that is going to have an outsized opportunity at changing the trajectory of his career, he's able to say yes to it and have the space to do that. And I want you to take a similar approach to building your profitable personal brand. Be conscious of where you're spending your time, because it's finite. And you've been going through this masterclass and you've been seeing there's quite a bit of pieces involved here, and it's worth it. It's worth being able to go and multiply your time, multiply your influence, multiply your audience. These things are insanely high leverage things. And this is what the future, of entrepreneurship looks like. And you're here because you believe that and you want to tap into it. But I want to tell you that most people around you, they won't understand this. We know, though, that what we're building are founder-led brands. And to do this, it takes a bit of time, and it takes saying no to distractions, to go and be able to focus on building something that's going to be an appreciating asset that you own for the rest of your life. You may be thinking, Matt, this is great and all, but I honestly feel a little overwhelmed. I get it, right? You've got content categories and your ikigai and your calling and the different tools and monetizing and your product and your offers. There's quite a bit of stuff to think about. The biggest pill against the overwhelm is thinking about your one domino. Your one domino is the one thing that will help make everything else easier or unnecessary. There's a popular book that I've been reading right now called The Slight Edge, and it goes over this concept, this idea of in each moment, we can pick just that one thing that can help change the trajectory of our life. When you go and you choose that slight edge in every moment, right? Focusing on that one thing that's the most important thing you can get done now, you'd be surprised at how the compounding effect works. 1% better every day is 37 times better in a year. When you're feeling overwhelmed, I want you to remember this one domino rule. Don't feel like you need to go and do it all in one go. It's impossible. From watching this masterclass and just choosing one thing a day and then another thing a day, you can stack up some massive wins. Along the way, if you want my help or my team's help going and scaling your founder-led brand, that's exactly what we do inside of Founder OS, which is honestly my life's work. We have an insane community of fellow high-growth founders just like you scaling their personal brands to the next level. I include over 180 systems. There's also a custom AI agent that's trained on over 3 million words and all of my public and private systems. We also have epic founder retreats that we host every single year, as well as over 50 live sessions every single month. If you're looking to take massive action, if you want to join an unbelievably vibrant community of founders that are all collectively building founder-led brands for the future, you should check out FounderOS, and you can go and check out a link for FounderOS and apply via the link in the description. Let's keep moving here. We got a lot more to cover. Automations in team building. I'm going to go over some core systems I've used to get more of my time back and be able to build massive amounts of leverage. When I first started building businesses 15 years ago, I really didn't know how to delegate, and I really struggled to, get my time back. I had a team of about 23 people, but I found myself being the chief everything officer, not the actual CEO. Night after night, spending all of my time building, creating, hiring, firing, you name it, it all came down to me. And I reached a breaking point. I eventually learned some core systems that helped me go and get more of my time back. And I'm going to share those with you today. When it comes to looking at your time, you need to get the AED system right. That stands for automate, eliminate, and delegate. I learned this because, from my days at BitMaker, overloading myself with a ton of stuff and just leading to burnout, I realized that first off, I needed to look at my time and where it was being spent, because at the end of the day, time is your most valuable resource as a founder, and your focus is your scarcest resource. I like to go and audit then, what is every single task I've gone and completed over the last month, and where has all the time in my calendar gone to? I go and I list these all out in a Google Sheet typically, and then I have the columns automate, eliminate, and delegate. First things first, you want to look at the stuff that you can eliminate, because if you shouldn't even be doing it in the first place, no sense delegating or automating it, you might as well just get that off your plate. The next aspect here then is automating, right? Are there tools that you can use, whether it's Hype Fury, HubSpot, ChatGPT, Zapier, pick a tool. The point is, can you just go and get this stuff off your plate, automate it, so it just runs on autopilot going forward? The next aspect then is delegate. And if you mark something as being something you should delegate, you want to mark who on your team can do this or who do you need to hire to do this. Ideally then have documentation and systemize exactly what that task is, film a Loom video around the given task, and then go and hand that off to someone so that they can do it even better than you, thereby relieving your time. And you're making now that person the systems designer going forward, meaning they are in charge of it, they own it, and they are the one responsible for it, so that you have the peace of mind that that's off your plate and you can focus on tasks that are more in your zone of brilliance. Building a personal brand is cool, but what's even better is building your personal media company. The difference is that you're not just the creator behind everything, that you're actually able to be the CEO and have a whole team around you who's going and helping you build things. I'm going to go and break down the core roles that you're probably going to want to have over time. But first things first, I want to get into some delegation math. What I like to do is think about, first off, what is my hourly rate? So for me, my hourly rate is $6,000 an hour. So let's say with something like a social media manager, right? Say that person costs $8,000 a month as just a random example. At $8,000 a month, let's say that person saves me 80 hours of time. So 20 hours a week. If we take, those 80 hours and we multiply it by the $6,000, I think it's like $480,000. That's a lot of money. $480,000 a month of time being saved because that social media manager at 8,000 is like something like, we're talking like a 20x ROI on that person, which is insane. I'm not just spending my time and chilling. I'm using those 80 hours that I've saved from that hire and then reallocating it to much more high leverage revenue generating activities. Then when I go and I think about, the actual personal media company I need to go and build, how I typically think about this is there's a few core hires that I like to make. I'm going to make a social media manager hire. If I'm going writing first, I'm going to eventually have a writing hire. If I'm going video first, I'm going to have a video editor hire. I'm going to have a tech person on my team. I'm going to have my chief of staff, and I'm probably going to have a closer to help us actually go and generate cash. Starting from the top, your social media manager is in charge of going and distributing all of your content. Okay, so this is the person that essentially is going to take any content that you have and make sure that it's on the right platform at the right time with the right captions and everything is dialed in. They're essentially my chief distribution officer, making sure that all content is distributed flawlessly and we are growing on these platforms. The next aspect is a writer. When you're going and scaling up on platforms like X, LinkedIn, and your newsletter, it quickly becomes a lot of writing. And so oftentimes what you want to do is have a writer helping you there with a lot of the packaging of your writing. So it's still your words, it's still your ideas, but they're helping package it up into things like X threads, LinkedIn posts, and newsletters, thereby saving you another 10 hours a week, 40 hours a month that you can reallocate to more revenue generating activities. And when you do that, you're going to get a hell of an ROI from that hire. The next aspect is if you're a video first creator, you're definitely going to want a video editor. A video editor essentially is just in charge of cutting down, long form content like this and making sure it's actually formatted right for platforms like YouTube. And then they're going to be in charge of also doing your short form content as well for things like Instagram Reels, TikTok, and YouTube Shorts. The key thing here is there's a massive difference between someone that just edits videos and then someone that is experienced with editing videos for the given platform. And the latter is really, really important. You want to make sure that you get someone with YouTube experience, and you want to actually look at their portfolio so you can determine, hey, is this stuff at the bar of quality that I expect? In terms of the edits, the pacing, the B-roll, the style, the taste, you want to make sure, obviously, it fits your brand and is something that you really feel good about, right? Because a 10x team is going to produce 10x results. Whereas if you just hire a bunch of mediocre people, well, you're going to get what you tolerate. The next person in line now is your tech person. It's important that you have someone to build things like your landing pages, your automation, set up your CRM, and make sure that all the piping of everything you've built is all nicely and seamlessly integrated. Now let's move on to the next hire here, which is your chief of staff. The key thing that I have my chief of staff do is audit my calendar every single week and plan out my next week to make sure that it's as optimized as possible, that I'm working on the highest leverage tasks available to me, and anything else is off my plate. The last thing is all internal communication: Slack, email, company updates, team all hands, different one-to-ones. I delegate a lot of that work to my chief of staff. That then frees up my time to work on things like being able to write my book, being able to create a couple YouTube videos a week, being able to go and make big hires, close massive strategic deals, and just have time to think, which is super important. The chief of staff can help you go and make sure that this whole team is integrated and running flawlessly so that you don't have to be distracted with internal operations and can instead work on the business, not inside it. The last hire you want to be thinking about, obviously, is a closer. The closer is going to be in charge of running your sales calls, being super strategic there in terms of getting on calls with folks, determining if they're the right fit for what you're building, getting them across the line, collecting payment, and getting you rocking and rolling so now you can serve that customer in the delivery side of your business. On the closer side, what I'm really looking for there primarily are two things. I want people that are insanely hungry and are coachable. When they're hungry, you know that they're going to go the extra mile for people and get those deals closed. When they're coachable, you know they're going to be receptive to feedback. And I'm requiring all of my salespeople to also send end-of-day reports every single day so that we know what's going well, what's not going well, what they're blocked on, and what they need help with. The right closer makes all the difference, and you should be aiming for someone that's capable of getting your close rate above 30%. The revenue engine of your business is running without you, and you can go and focus on the things that are going to seriously move your business forward, not just over the next year, but help you ladder up to your vision over the next 10 years. All right, now we're going to get into the art of intentional content. As I've grown as an entrepreneur, I actually see myself as more of an artist than an entrepreneur. There's the art of creating beautiful content with taste, with style, with your tone, your own point of view. You know, the artistry, I think it matters because amidst a sea of constant noise online, there's something for it to be said for just making things your own. We didn't have to climb 9 mountains in 9 days filming this series, but it's for the artistry, folks. The art. I want to give you some tips that I've learned, some things that I think about when I'm creating intentional content. That first things first, that your taste is the ultimate competitive advantage. Taste to me is being able to use your own creative intuition. You know, you've probably got all of these things in your head, things you've seen, sites you've seen, music you've listened to, art you've looked at. Maybe it's things on Pinterest boards, Instagram collections, YouTube playlists. Who knows where you're getting it from? You're saving all of these references in your brain, and your taste, I think, is this unwavering desire to make sure that whatever you produce, it hits that bar. But each piece of content that we put out, it represents a piece of art with our name on it. And it's an opportunity to put our own stamp, our own signature on it. When I go and I think about creators these days, I actually think that the best creators are the best curators. When you're going and you're looking to make amazing content, I oftentimes find it's useful to be able to go and know and understand what amazing content even looks like. The more that you're able to move from being a consumer online to actually a curator, you start to be able to refine your own palette for the art that you share. Examples of places that I go and I curate, my own palette. I read a ton of books. And so I'll go and read books like The Courage to Be Disliked, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, The Creative Act, The Slight Edge, and The Psychology of Money, Same as Ever, Atomic Habits, Systemology. And when I'm reading a book, I'll highlight it. And those highlights through a Readwise integration get ported over to a Notion board that looks like this. What happens then is all of these highlights across these books are all saved to this Notion that I can reference at any time. And this serves as this amazing library of all of my favorite quotes, copies, sentences that I can then go and reference for future art that I create. What ends up happening is when you start to refine what you like, your own taste, your own references, you create this massive mental board of what beauty looks like to you. And so what I want you to do as an action step is go and save a YouTube playlist with your taste. Go and save an Instagram collection with your taste and start to then be able to go and curate your taste online so that as you start to create, you have an abundance of different sources of inspiration so that you never run dry. For me, my vision and what I'm building is to inspire 100 million founders just like you to accomplish their dreams through proven systems. Over the next 3 years with FounderOS, my goal is to help over 100,000 founders through FounderOS, right? To build out my audience to over 50 million people, or to release 5 best-selling books over the next 5 years. Most importantly, build a team that when I look to the left and look to the right of me, I'm got to pinch myself that I get to work with these people. All of that is going to come about, I think, just by focusing on what's in front of me, approaching it like it's this opportunity to create a masterpiece. And if I can keep on making stuff that I think is amazing, stuff that I would want, then it passes my elevated bar of art that we want to put out there. And I think as we keep doing that, we create a brand that stands for something. We create a movement of founders that really believe in freedom to work where you want, when you want, on what you want, with who you want, and to live a vibrant life, being able to explore, adventure, and have fun. So you've probably been listening to this and you're also wondering, Matt, what separates the founders that are successful in setting up a profitable personal brand from those that eventually fail? And so I'd love to double click into that a little bit. First things first is the people that are successful do the work. The people that are not successful focus on their feelings any given day and don't do what is necessary. And this is true for life. This is true for relationships. And it's also true with your personal brand. This takes an investment of your time and energy, but it's worth it, right? Look at the media leverage that you can build. Look at the amount of community and the movement you can build, the audience now that you can go and find top talent from, build your business, get more customers from. It's a no-brainer, but you have to show up. The next aspect that really separates people is consistency over perfectionism, right? The ones that are successful just focus on showing up, being consistent day after day, and great things happen. Those that end up falling apart are just focused on perfectionism. They're trying to make the perfect piece of content. It stays in the backlog. They never publish it. Thereby, they never get the leverage. They never get the feedback, and everything just stays behind the scenes versus being actually shown to the world. When you push the content, when you publish it, when you get it out there, that is when the leverage begins. What you want to be focused on is daily shipping. When you ship it, you get those leverage wheels turning. You're building your founder flywheel. You're learning, you're getting feedback that you can then apply to future content. And this machine is running. Just ship it. The next aspect that separates folks that are successful from not is that they just execute the systems. There are systems for content creation, your content waterfall system, for hiring, for building your team, for growing on each of the different platforms. Just execute the systems. There's a lot of area to be creative here, but also don't reinvent the wheel. You execute the systems, the growth happens, right? And what you want to be doing is, as a founder, limiting the amount of decisions you need to make in a day. Your personal brand is an appreciating asset that you own. And now you have the entire blueprint to go and implement your content GPS, build massive leverage, build your personal media company, and build something, most importantly, that you're having fun with. Along the way, if you want my help and my team's help, you should definitely go and check out FounderOS. You'll get over 50 live sessions with me and my team per month. You'll be able to join Q&As with me to go and answer any questions you have around building your personal brand. You get access to over 180 systems, a custom founder AI agent we've built, and so much more. If this is interesting to you, you should definitely go and book a call. via the link in the description, get on a call with either me or my team, and we can learn more about what you're really trying to do with your brand this year and help you out. Thank you so much for being a part of this personal branding masterclass experience. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to working with you. Let's win together.